President Trump leaving Washington after a stunning reversal on his own immigration policy, giving in to overwhelming pressure from all sides, but still trying to blame everybody else for the mess he made himself on the border.
So the Democrats want open borders. Let everybody come in. Let everybody pour in. We don't care. Let them come in from the Middle East. Let them come in from all over the place. We don't care. We're not going to let it happen. And by the way, today I signed an executive order. We're going to keep families together, but the border is going to be just as tough as it's been.
It all sounds good, works up the crowd of his base. They might believe him, but facts do matter. And the fact is, this president caved on his own immigration policy after he and his administration lied repeatedly. They lied to defend the indefensible, holding crying children hostage to gain political advantage. It is shameful. Only caving when there were too many heartbreaking pictures to sweep under the rug, too many defenseless children begging for their mothers and fathers. Awful. This president and his administration tried to convince you that Democrats were to blame.
I say it's very strongly the Democrats' fault.
We would like to fix these loopholes, and if Democrats want to get serious about it instead of playing political games, they're welcome to come here and sit down with the president and actually do something about it.
All right, so that's just two lies in a row there. The fact is, zero tolerance has nothing to do with Democrats. It was this White House that decided to prosecute every single adult caught crossing the border illegally, even if they came with children, separating parents from their kids with no clear plan to reunite them. It's not very clear now. And even though this was his own policy, the president tried to claim his hands were tied and tried to blame Congress.
Wait, you can't do it through an executive order.
Until these loopholes are closed by Congress, it is not possible as a matter of law to detain and remove whole family units who arrive illegally in the United States.
It's Congress's job to change the law. We're calling on them to do exactly that.
Three lies, two from the podium, one from the White House lawn. This administration tried to claim their policy that ripped children, crying children from the arms of their parents, was not a brutal deterrence.
I have not been directed to do that for purposes of deterrence, no.
That's exactly what it was. Senior policy advisor, listen closely, senior policy advisor Stephen Miller telling the New York Times this, quote, "It was a simple decision by the administration to have a zero-tolerance policy for illegal entry, period. The message is that no one is exempt from immigration law." And they tried to claim that they were just following the law, even at the expense of their own humanity.
Is this new zero-tolerance policy that the president has supported, that the Attorney General announced, is it humane?
I think it's the law. As a law enforcement,
it may be the law, look, it's the policy, but is it humane?
I think it's the law, and I'm a law enforcement. I must follow the law.
They even tried to claim that God was on their side.
I would cite you to the Apostle Paul and his clear and wise command in Romans 13 to obey the laws of the government, because God has ordained the government for his purposes.
So the president and his administration completely contradicting everything they have told us about their zero-tolerance policy. Their hands were not tied. They didn't have to wait for Congress to do something, to do anything. And they can't blame the Democrats. But the fact remains, more than 2,000 children have already been separated from their parents. Some of them are being held thousands of miles from the border. And the administration can't really say whether the president's executive order will do anything at all for them. So here we are. Still a ball of confusion. Parents away from their kids. All because of the administration. And now they have to backtrack for something that they did. They're trying to blame someone else. Let the gaslighting, it's not even begin. Still gaslighting. I want to bring in now CNN political analyst Brian Karem, CNN contributor Selena Zito, the author of The Great Revolt, and CNN political commentator Amanda Carpenter, who knows all about gaslighting because that's the name of her book, Gaslighting America, Why We Love It When Trump Lies to Us. I don't know, Amanda, since I said that, off, going off the title of your book there, people didn't like this gaslighting so much. They didn't fall for it. It was not good. They handled it poorly. The gaslighting did not work for the most part here, did it?
No, and I think the silver lining is that Republicans didn't fall for it this time. Look at what happened today. President Donald Trump issued an executive order to outlaw a policy of his that his administration claimed up and down did not exist. That is gaslighting.
And that they needed Congress to fix in the first place. But and everyone has been saying he can just do it himself. All right, go on. Sorry.
Right, but his own executive order sort of proves that lie in real time. And I think what pushed him to do that is that you had Republicans finally standing up and saying, you can't do this. We are not going to separate mothers and their kids at the border. Republican governors stood up and said, we are not going to send National Guard troops to help you. And so that is helpful in this process because Donald Trump is not going to stop lying. The only thing that is going to stop him in his tracks are Republicans who stand up and say, you have gone too far.
Who are scared they won't get reelected. That's what it boils down to.
Well, Brian, I mean, in the face of world leaders, religious leaders, corporate America, Republicans, Democrats, the first ladies, the First Lady of the United States, the former First Ladies, he caved under massive pressure. He capitulated, but he's still out there on the road saying, well, I fix this. Well, he made a mess. And he didn't have to sign an executive order. He could just say, don't do this. But go on.
Yeah, I mean, he fixed a policy that he claimed wasn't his, that he couldn't do anything about after he started the problem that didn't need to exist anyway. I mean, the simple fact of the matter, boil it down, the president lied to us, got caught in a lie, tried to cover it up, and at the end had to fold. Now, it's a nice thing, the move that was made today. It's a nice move in the right direction, but it portends and it portends disaster for the Republicans, for everybody else coming forward. I mean, when is this president ever going to tell us the truth? The only reason, and I spoke with a couple of my sources on the Hill today who said, look, the only reason why he did this is because there were members of the GOP who told him point blank they don't want to campaign for fall re-election with those posters, pictures, and sounds of children ringing in their ear and being, at all the rallies and the protests that would occur. They told him that if we don't get reelected and you're facing a Democratic majority after the fall elections, you can look forward to a nice, healthy impeachment. So what did he do? He capitulated for his own self-interest. This was a problem that didn't need to exist. This is a problem that didn't exist beforehand. And it's nice to see that finally, someone showed some empathy. That the question I asked is, who has some empathy? And that was a question that was answered by everyone else in the country, and the president had to capitulate to that.
Selena, just because the arsonist comes back and throws a bucket of water in the fire doesn't mean that they didn't start the fire in the first place. So,
I feel like we should be singing a Billy Joel song now.
Do you give the president any credit for stopping a crisis of his own making? He was the arsonist here, but he did throw the bucket of water on it.
That's hysterical.
It's a great line. It's a great line.
So, the policy maybe on paper looked great, right? We're going to have zero tolerance on the border. This is what we're going to do. We're fulfilling a campaign promise. But, policies always look great on paper, but then you implement them, and then there's always a human component to it. And there was nothing about that. Those children separated from their parents. There was nothing about that you could rally around and say, oh, this is great. I mean, people understand that that something illegal is going on, but they also understand we are not this people. We don't, I mean, we don't separate children from their parents.
Hey, Selena, let me ask you, but all those people screaming behind him at, at this rally, saying, I signed an executive order that, like, he fixed it. So what is it? Do they believe that? Or do they know he's just, he's up there just performing and pulling their leg? Or they don't, I don't know, or they don't care? What?
Well, no, when you're at a rally, so we're not looking at the whole rally, right? So I'm guessing that didn't happen at just that was the only thing he said. He probably said a series of things that led up to it, and then a series of things that are after it. And
I can tell you what, it was the Democrats. They did it. They started it.
That's a
Congress
campaign
had
rally.
to work.
That's always his big
Congress's
point.
thing.
It's somebody else's
I'm just
fault.
guessing. And I had to sign an executive order today, and I came to the rescue, and I fixed the fire, and I threw the bucket on the water.
Well,
I mean, the bucket on the fire, the water on the fire.
To your point, though,
But let her finish. Let her finish, Brian.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So should we be surprised? This is what he does. This is what he always does. And if we don't, if people don't like what he does, that's you show up and you vote against him, or if you do like it, you show up and vote for him. And it's not like this is something new. This is for better or worse. This is his comportment. This is how he handles it.
And he's at a rally.
He
yeah, he's out there in a rally. And the truth
governs.
is, though, I'm told that he didn't speak that much about it at this rally, Brian.
Yeah, I'm going to guess he inserted it, with a bunch of things and just sandwiched it in there, and it becomes part of the whole event.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
To your point, this is very indicative of how Donald Trump governs. And it's scary. This issue has Stephen Miller's fingerprints all over it. And the bottom line is they said, hey, let's get together and do something that will really be a deterrent and stop these people from coming over the border. And they didn't examine this issue. It was with a massive amount of ignorance that they did this. To think that this would deter anyone from coming over the border after you face the conditions that these people face. They come over here already knowing that they could face death, robbery. I mean, I've covered numerous stories like this where these people are going through hell on earth just to realize the American dream. So if they had wanted to be cold and factual, they could have said, hey, even if we separate these children, they're getting better living conditions than they are in their home country. And they'd be right. They'd be cold and callous and cruel and soulless, but they would be right. But they didn't look at it. And so it just tells you that when he said he got the best and the brightest, he didn't.
Amanda.
And that's pointed.
Man, I want you to take a look at this moment. This is from inside the Oval Office today. It's between Vice President Pence and President Trump. Watch this.
The President's made clear, as we believe, it's a false choice between whether we are a country of law and order, a country with borders, and a country that demonstrates the compassion and the heart of the American people.
I think the word compassion comes into it, but it's still equally as tough, if not tougher.
So the Vice President uses the word compassion. The President immediately turns it back to toughness. How should we read that, Amanda?
I think he's sort of unhappy with the corner that he has been boxed into. I mean, I think he bought into the deterrence policy, but didn't appreciate the human cost that would come with it. I mean, everybody was fine with this until the news stories started coming out with the pictures and the audio. And people learned there was a difference. Listen, I work for Ted Cruz. I know all about the unaccompanied minors that come alone and get housed in facilities in Texas. This has been going on for a long time. It's tragic, and we really need to look at where those children have gone. There's a lot more children who've come to America without their parents who are lost in the system that we need to find and figure out what happened to. But that put aside, I think, John Kelly, Stephen Miller, Donald Trump really thought if we told people you will lose your children, that would stop it. And now he realized that backfired on him, and he's upset because he wants to appear strong, and he did cave, and he doesn't like it. And he also wanted to put the blame on someone else, saying that it was the Democrats, and he thought, I guess people would believe that as well.
That's his standard basis. He wants to blame everybody for everything else and take no responsibility for anything himself. And it's always blaming the Democrats or somebody who doesn't agree with him.
Yeah, or Obama or Hillary or something.
Or
Mueller.
He's still running in the election. He's still...
Selena, I'm sorry, Brian, I got to get Selena in on this because remember Selena your, not your claim to fame, but we knew you during the election as the person who wrote this, that the press takes Trump literally, but not seriously, while his supporters take him seriously, but not literally. I mean, does that still hold
Great
true?
line.
Because it seems like we have taken him literally, and his actions matched his words, you think, on this one?
I don't think anything much in terms of of the way the people that support him view him, and in the terms of the way he uses words and he uses language. I don't think much has changed. I don't think there's a level of expectation that his voters think and the people that support him think that's going to change.
Even on this particular issue, Selena? I'm talking about this issue.
Yeah, here's our problem, Dawn, and I think about this all the time when I'm out there. Everything is at like the 11th decibel, and the switch is sort of broken off, right? Mm-hmm. So every issue is all the way up there, the small ones and the really, really important ones, the ones that have deep impact on people's lives. And so because everything is at that level, I think everything has the same level of importance. Or either that or people are tuning out, which is not a good thing.
I don't disagree with you. The sky is falling, the sky is falling.
Yeah,
that's
and I'm worried about that because that's not how we should view politics and or government. We need to be able to step back and look at things individually because everything's so heightened. I'm concerned that we're losing that ability to look at things that way.
Maybe there's a lesson. I got to run, but is it a lesson for Democrats and maybe even for I know the media is not Democrats, but that maybe
I think it's for all of us.
For all of us that everything is not DEFCON 5.
Yeah, everybody in the U.S.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to disagree real quick. We've been at 11 for immigration for a long time, and I've been a part of the Republican camp trying to say there is a crisis at the border all through the Obama years, and there has been. I've seen the facilities, I've seen the pictures. It's terrible. Yes, many years. Yeah. And so when are we going to get together? Great, fantastic. But Republicans have been screaming about the crisis at the border, and I've been part of the people told, don't worry about that, you just hate brown people, etc. No, there's really bad things happening, and at some point we have to come together, secure the border, and take care of the people who are here.
Party uses this as a political
football.
Sure. That's the problem. They have to take it seriously, and neither party has done that in the 35 years I've been covering it. And until they do, they won't change a thing.
We got to take it seriously and literally. So thank you all. I appreciate it. Terry Ensign is here with me, and CNN White House correspondent Caitlin Collins also joins us, and our chief political correspondent Dana Bash is going to join us in just a moment. So thank you all for joining us. Good evening to you. So Harry, this is a big upset here. What's going on?
This is a huge upset. Nobody thought that Joe Crowley was going down. Yes, there was some noise on the left that there was going to be a real challenge. The Intercept really got behind Joe Crowley's progressive challenger. But there was no sense that this was going on. But this is not an isolated incident. In the 9th District in New York, Yvette Clarke is in a lot of trouble tonight. In Maryland, Governor Ben Jealous, who's the left-wing candidate in that race, is doing particularly well. So it does seem, if there was some argument before tonight that there wasn't a lot of energy on the progressive side of the Democratic Party, there certainly was this evening.
So let's talk about her a little bit more, okay, Harry? Because she is running obviously to his left, right? Correct. To Crowley's left. It says even with universal health care, a federal jobs guarantee, and the abolition of ICE headlining her demands, Crowley has a formidable liberal record to lean on. So she is young.
She is young.
But
she is young. She's also a minority candidate in a district that is now majority minority, and she's a woman in the year of the woman. But to me, it's amazing that Joe Crowley really didn't have a fire in the fence, right? He was a very liberal congressman, but he wasn't liberal enough.
Yeah. What does this say to you about this? Because when I saw you just before the show, you said this is big. We were paying attention to what happened in Staten Island, especially because of Grimm and Grimm going to jail and all of that. Should we be, same question I asked Chris just moments ago, should we be paying more attention, do you think, to Democratic primaries instead of so much focus on the Republicans?
Absolutely. I mean, look, Democrats have a decent shot at taking control in November, but more than just for this year, I think it's a preview of the 2020 primary season, the presidential race, and there could be a lot of energy on the left, and it does seem to me that you just can't be against Trump. You have to stand for something, at least in the primaries tonight.
He ranks 4th among House Democrats, and it was said that he could take over for Nancy Pelosi?
Exactly. He definitely could have, given how much trouble she is. And remember, Eric Cantor lost his primary about 4 years ago tonight. This is that What that was on the Republican side, this is on the Democratic side. It's huge.
All right. I'm going to get to Caitlin Collins now. Caitlin, you know, it is a big night for the president because in 2 races, in Staten Island and in South Carolina, the candidate that the president threw his weight behind came out ahead.
That's true, and this is really a test of the president's endorsement because so far he's had mixed reviews when he's done that, and we heard a little bit from the president on that last night when he was in South Carolina at that rally for Governor McMaster, trying to get out those last-minute votes, and the White House has really put their full weight behind him. Not only was Trump there, but Vice President Mike Pence had been there over the weekend, so that was really an indication of what really that was going to mean for the president. And the president tried to couch it last night by saying that if McMaster did lose, it was going to make the president look bad, and the press was going to say it was a test of his endorsement, which it would have been. So he was telling people to get out and vote in order so that that would not happen. But McMaster is someone who was an early, very loyal supporter of the president's. Of course, he became governor when the president picked Nikki Haley to become the United Nations ambassador. So that is how that went. But truly, the president going there, he's already tweeting about his projected victory tonight. The president doesn't typically tweet this late at night, so clearly he is pleased with the results of that race there. And it does seem to bode well for the president in his mind going forward when he does go and throw his weight behind someone there. You can see there he's saying a tremendous win for Congressman Dan Donovan, someone the president endorsed earlier this year, saying that he had voted for his tax cuts, which he did not. Kind of an embarrassing tweet there, but the president saying he showed great courage in a tough race. Now, this race was interesting, Don, because of course people thought that Dan Donovan's opponent was someone who was more like President Trump than Dan Donovan, so that he was the more Trump-like candidate, would appeal to the president's base more often. But there, the president clearly expressing some pleasure. He's very happy with the results of these 2 races here tonight.
Yeah, that was a pretty fast tweet, Caitlin. And let's bring Dana in now. Dana, what does this mean for the 2018 for this so-called blue wave? Can we read anything in here?
Well, I think obviously at this point in the night, the most stunning election result is what we've seen from Representative Joe Crowley, the fact that he has been defeated from within his own party, a Democratic leader defeated from within his own party from the left. Now, this is something that we have seen for a decade among Republicans, leaders and others who have been in office for many, many years, being much more worried about their right flank than anything else. Obviously, as we've heard from our colleagues, that sentiment and that sensibility has been growing inside the Democratic Party, but nothing is going to shock. And already I can tell you from talking to sources inside the House Democratic Caucus, it already is sending major shockwaves through their ranks, because this is Joe Crowley is the conference chairman in charge of messaging, and much more importantly, up until an hour ago, he was somebody who was very seriously considering and considered for potentially the Speaker of the House. So that's why this is incredibly symbolic and also a real wake-up call for Democrats tonight, not just in New York, not just in Washington, but frankly, around the country.
So let's talk about, Dana, why you're there. Obviously, we want you on the breaking news, but I see a Romney sign behind you. Tell us what's happening in Utah right now.
Yes. That's right. Meanwhile, in the Republican Party, I am in Utah. You see this picturesque scenery behind me. It is because the Republican nominee in 2012 for president, Mitt Romney, who is now considered as establishment as it gets, he is hoping that he's going to be able to claim victory in his primary here tonight, Don. This is actually something that he didn't expect, nobody in his family or anywhere else expected, but when Orrin Hatch, the longtime serving senator from Utah, announced that he was going to retire, he asked Romney to consider running for a seat, and he is. And this is something that is incredibly significant, because when we're talking about the splits within each party, this is probably as kind of iconic as it gets, because you, of course, remember Mitt Romney went after Donald Trump in the heat and the heart of the Republican primary season, calling him a phony and a fraud, since at least certainly when the president was elected, he was considered for Secretary of State. So he's gone back and forth. But the main reason Mitt Romney wants to go back to Washington is because he feels like there needs to be a voice in that wing of the Republican Party. And I think I hear one of Mitt Romney's sons starting to speak behind me, so I'll toss it back to you.
Okay, Dana, stand by. Thank you very much for that. I hate to keep jumping around. I'm going to bring Harry back in now. Harry, let's talk a little bit more about the Democrats, because I'm wondering what this is going to mean for the future of the party come 2020, because people have been lamenting about the lack of leadership in the Democratic Party. And I'm just wondering if this race in New York here, if that is some indication that we're going to be looking at a whole crop, or at least a lot of possibilities, some new folks.
I think we can be looking at a lot of new folks and a lot of younger folks as well. I mean, Joe Crowley was sort of the young person in the Democratic leadership. Nancy Pelosi, who's obviously the leader of the Democrats right now in the House, is getting up there in age. Chuck Schumer is not a young man either. I think that there's a lot of energy, not just on the left side of the party, but among young people. And tonight, obviously, in the 14th, where you have a 28-year-old Latina woman fighting and looking like she has won that race, it indicates to me that there's a lot of balls going on, jumping in the air right now, and I think that it could be a very, very interesting time ahead.
Does this say to you in some instance, and maybe it's just on a micro level, it could be macro, that Democrats, especially the strongest part of the party right now, I would imagine is the resistance, the progressive part of the party, they really want people to fight back against this administration and its policies?
I think that's definitely the case, although I should say we should point out that there are differences within the resistance, right? There's plenty of the resistance that's not necessarily that far to the left, but this is definitely a sign that the left wing, the progressive wing of the party is very, very strong, and they want a seat at the table.
All right. Thank you very much, Harry. Thank you, Dana. Thanks, Caitlin. I appreciate it. When we come back, much more in our breaking news tonight. A major upset in New York. CNN projects Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a 28-year-old running for her first campaign. She has defeated 10-term incumbent Congressman Joe Crowley in New York's 14th in the most shocking upset of a rollicking political season. Plus, President Trump's travel ban may be watered down. He said so himself, but it's still a win. Here's our breaking news tonight, and there's no other way of putting it. This is the most shocking upset of this political season. CNN projects a progressive political activist has defeated a member of the House Democratic leadership in New York's 14th, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a 28-year-old running her first campaign, beating 10-term incumbent Congressman Joe Crowley. And it's unbelievable. We want to talk about it. Let's bring in now former Congressman David Jolly. He's a Florida Republican. Also, CNN political commentator Scott Jennings and Angela Rye. So here we are on another election/primary night, and wow, there's a lot going on. So, Angela, give me your reaction to this. I mean, Joe Crowley, he was like fourth among House Democrats, losing today.
Yeah. He's the chair of the Democratic caucus, and I think one of the things that we're seeing, it really reminds me of that 2010 election, going into the 2010 election when you saw the Tea Party really rise and say that they're taking their country back, and whatever, is behind that we don't have to debate right now. But I think the interesting thing is people really start battling with the identity of a party. So you're seeing folks saying, you're not liberal enough, you're not progressive enough, or you don't recognize or support or represent my value system anymore. And so we're going to run people who do. And I think you're going to see that a lot more, not just within the Democratic Party ranks between liberals and more liberal or more progressive, but also along racial lines. You're seeing that with the Capuano-Presley race in Boston as well. So I think you're going to see more of this.
Hey, before I bring the other guys in, I just want to ask you this. Do you think that strategy, Angela, it seems to be working in a bunch of local, maybe even some state races, but what about on a national level? You think nationally people are going to say, okay, or at least for Democrats, we want the country to be more progressive and have more liberal values rather than sort of trying to reach out to the people that everyone said Democrats missed last time during 2016?